look at it as a continuous journey. There's no start and end to it. It's something that you learn every day. You get better at it every single day. So, I equate it to sports just because, I played sports, and in business, athletically, you don't have to lose anything. Your mind can just get sharper and sharper and sharper. And I know now, based on my experience in having made the decisions I could have made better earlier in my career. And there's no way for me to improve on myself if I'm not a continuous learner throughout the process. So yeah, my number one advice would just be completely open to learning for the rest of your life, or as long as you want to be an entrepreneur, not getting stuck in your own brain or in your own.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And if you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast. Chad Price, and to give you a bit of introduction. So Chad played college football at Rice University, always wanted to go into business. So got a double major in a couple different things that he'll touch on. Then worked for construction, also played a bit of ball after graduation, and decided he wanted to go into business for himself. Started a business with a couple friends, and he'll talk a little bit about what that is. And I believe it's still going, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. And then kind of got to understand different types of stores and different types of niches. So in addition to the company with this friend, which is I think Kettlebell Kings, and it goes about kettlebells, also got into a bit of different brand building, different contents, different markets, and expanded into, I think, Living Fit was another business you're in. I'm starting doing interviews and other fitness and lifestyle products, launched an app, also got into, I think, a bit of CBD and hemp company, and is also, I think, partnered with that company with George Foreman III. So all sorts of fun things, lots of fun parts to talk about his journey. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Chad.
All right, thanks for having me.
So I gave this kind of the brief, quick run through, but maybe now going back a bit in time, tell us a little bit about playing college football in Rice, and then how things started from there.
Sure. I mean, yeah, when when I was still in college, even at that point, kind of in my life, I knew corporate America was kind of going to be a pit stop for me. I wanted to see what it was like to work for a corporation, but I kind of knew in my heart that I wanted to own my own business. Nobody in my family really owned their own business. I did have an aunt who owned her own business for a while, who I worked with when I was younger, that kind of motivated me to choose that direction. But I hadn't seen anybody do it to the scale where, someone's building a global brand or a recognizable brand. And so even at that point, that was always kind of one of my goals. That journey through Rice just kind of helped me see, different industries, different paths in terms of corporate careers, as well as different types of businesses that, could be a potential for a business that I could start. So, after I graduated from Rice.
One question before that, just so because you were doing college football, and a lot of dream, and not all, or a lot of people don't make it, but it's you play college ball and you go professional, or you go do something with that. As you're going into football, was it, hey, I that's my dream, or hey, this will be a good way to be able to get into the scholarship, or otherwise fund my degrees, or kind of going into that? How did you decide between kind of the sports that to be in the college level, even at that, is a great accomplishment and a big feat. So how did you kind of decide I want to do business when you're also doing football?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I think if you go to Rice, you have the mindset of kind of doing both. I don't think many athletes go to Rice on full scholarship and don't think about what their career is after. I think it's an education focused curriculum and education focused system from the very beginning. With that being said, I think every football player, basketball player, every athlete dreams about the Olympics, the championship, the Super Bowl, whatever that may be. So yeah, I did aspire to continue to play football. But quite honestly, even at that point, I knew that was a temporary pit stop for me. So if it was corporate America or if it was football, it was still going to end up with me having to, do something to, build for the rest of my life. And in my mind, that was always, some type of business. I didn't know what that was going to be, but that's kind of where my thought process was at the time.
No, definitely makes sense. And so now you graduate, you're coming out, and I think you got a double major. Is that right? Remind me what you got the degrees in.
Yeah, so yeah, at the time, Rice didn't have a formal business degree. They had basically it's managerial studies, and then I also have a degree in sports management, which is basically a business degree in sports. And so it just talks or just focuses more on the professional sports and the marketing around that industry.
So now you're coming out of school, you've got your degrees, you're saying, okay, I may need to get a bit of experience. Really, my heart is in entrepreneurships. And so I think after you graduated, you had a short stint in kind of construction and doing a little bit with ball afterwards before deciding to get into business yourself. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. Construction is probably one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, actually. Interesting enough, it's hard work, but it's rewarding work. You get to go from project to project. You get to see something go from the beginning to the end and start over. And so no 2 days are really the same, especially if you're working on larger projects. So I really like that part about construction when I was still kind of transitioning from, what do I want to do full time with my life? I wasn't at a point where I wanted to be tied down to a corporate job either. And construction allowed me to kind of travel and basically go from project to project versus, clocking in 9 to 5, 360 days a year or what have you.
Mm. No, and I think that definitely makes sense. I mean, for me, I've never gotten into construction. I've only been on the side of having a house built or other things, seeing the construction. But there's definitely, I think, would be a rewarding aspect of, hey, we see something, it starts at nothing, builds it up, and you can say, hey, I helped build that, and hey, you can kind of point to that as something as an accomplishment would certainly be exciting. Now you're doing that for a period of time, enjoying that. Now, when you got into, or how did you make that transition? Decide, okay, you wanted to go into business yourself. Was it just kind of, I've decided I didn't want to be construction forever, or I had a good opportunity or good idea? Kind of what prompted that shift a bit?
So even when I was in construction, I was working as a project manager. So I was basically running a small crew, basically from project to project. So whether we were doing seeding, demolition, uh, remodeling, you name it, I worked on quite a few different things in construction. But the actual owner of that company was the dad of a guy who I played football with, and so he
Mm.
was a small business owner. Another mentor of mine from that in that sense, where I really got to see what a small business is like being run at that level. So even though I was doing the day-to-day work of a project manager for a construction company, I was on site day to day. I was still learning behind the scenes of how everything worked from a small business perspective. And at that time, I actually thought that I was gonna construction would be my choice of business. It ended up not being that once I partnered with a couple of my buddies and looked at just the general landscape and the potential behind um, what I wanted to achieve. But yeah, it still allowed me to kind of see a small business from the inside out and learn and gain that experience.
No, I think that's cool. So now, so you got it, and that definitely makes sense. So now you got into initial. I think the first business you mentioned is you kind of went on your own, as you got with a few friends and you started the kettlebell company. Is that right?
Yeah, so after I worked in construction for a little bit, I actually moved over and I started working in oil and gas, and I was working as a gas controller, basically working shift work, 12-hour shifts, maintaining a gas pipeline, and in doing that, that was a very traditional kind of corporate job, great pay, great benefits. But it was, a commitment from our standpoint, and it was a long-term commitment if it was something that, I was going to do for the rest of my life. And so during that process, I had a couple other friends who were kind of in the similar situation. Um, One of them actually was working with me at the oil and gas company, and another one was a friend of our he was best friends with a guy we went to college with, and so it was very kind of tight circle. Um, we kind of made a pact that we were going to start a company, didn't know what that was. We had a good reference of what e-commerce was because my friend was working at BigCommerce at the time. So he had a very good insight of, what makes a successful business. He had a good chance to see, companies come on board and go from nothing to something kind of overnight, really studying niche markets and different opportunities for trying to create your own, basically trying to be noticed in such a crowded space of e-commerce. And so we felt like we had a little edge in that sense of really understanding how to do that. And we just started naming companies. And so kettlebells was one of the products that we wanted. We at the time we were talking about so many different things, all different types of fitness equipment, sleeping companies, basically any niche market that we could think of, we were trying to go after. Kettlebells was just one of those things that at that time CrossFit was becoming really big, and we could really see the potential of this is a thing that's here to stay, and it's going to be growing over the next 10 to 15 years, and it's only going to get more kind of ingrained into fitness and into what people consider a workout. So Kettlebell Kings being so kind of literal was almost too good to pass up, so to speak.
No, it definitely makes sense. Now, one question on that is, were you guys, hey, as you did your research, were you looking for something you thought was a good opportunity? Was it something you guys are familiar with? Was it something you're passionate about? As an example, did you like kettlebells? Were you using it for workout? Was it more of just, hey, this is a growing space, and a little bit, we don't care what this space is. We just want to find something that we can drive and grow and that type of thing? Or kind of how did you land on kettlebells?
Yeah, I think it was, it definitely because it was a growing space. That was one of the driving factors. But then also with, our background in sports and fitness at the time, we were all trying to find our routine for, what does my health and wellness routine look like after sports, right? I think if you play collegiate or professional sports, it's a much different workout regimen than, this is my daily life, or this is my, monthly lifestyle type of workout routine. And so me personally, like, I didn't like going to a gym. So I hate going to 24-hour fitness or, any of these gyms where it's just a bunch of people there waiting on machines, jumping over people, people working out at different level of intensities. That's just not my, my speed for working out. And so home workouts became a big thing for us, and kettlebells and minimal space workout was kind of one of the trending uh, things that was happening kind of just in the fitness industry in itself. And so we really like that personally. I think that fit our personal, kind of goals for our own health and wellness. But then I think we saw that to be kind of the future of health and wellness is, it is much more of a personal journey. The minimal space athlete, I think you've seen, or we've all seen kind of with COVID, that kind of your home fitness workout is the core of your health and wellness. What you do, in the space that you have available to you is more important than, where you go or what big pieces of equipment you have available to you. And so we really want to create a lifestyle and community around that.
No, I think that definitely makes sense. I mean, finding something that's a good opportunity that you're interested in, that you're, use a product yourself and is an up and coming market, all makes sense. Now, as you guys started this out, were you guys doing it as a side job or kind of a side hustle getting it started? And is it still a side hustle, or did you guys kind of transition as it grew to be a full-time gig?
Yeah, I mean, the first year and a half, I was still working full time. So, one of the luxuries of working a shift work is, you work 12-hour shifts, rotating shifts, and, sometimes you're working 12 hours during the day, sometimes you're working 12 hours during the night. So 12 hours during the night used to probably be the best time for me to get work done, because I could work during the day after I got up. And then, at night it's a lot more peaceful in the control room. And so you can do a lot of research and reading and just kind of all the minute things around building a business. I was able to do that, over those night shifts and things like that. And so after about a year and a half of us having something and really seeing, okay, we have sales, we prove the concept of Kettlebell Kings. We see the trajectory going in the direction that we like. someone always has to kind of just jump in there and kind of go full throttle. And so at that point, I quit my job. Um, went to do this full time. We were still shipping out of a storage facility, like a 10 by 10 storage facility, but it was enough that somebody had to go over there every day. Someone had to, deal with customers every single day. And so about 6 months after that, we got to the point where it was almost too much for one person. And so my business partner did the same thing as well. So he quit his job, and yeah, from there we just kept going. So we're at probably 8 employees right now, and growing. Probably 8 full-time employees, and still growing. Um, and so it's just been kind of a never-ending growth process since that point.
Hey, that's always a great place to be in that growth and to have things expanding and going in the right direction is definitely exciting now. And I think as we chatted a bit before the podcast, you have Kettlebell Kings, but then you guys kind of started, I don't know, and I say you guys, maybe it was you, your partners or otherwise, you started to expand into other areas. Was that kind of out of diversification and or you had other opportunities or excited about other things, or kind of how did you start to expand into additional businesses and growing other things?
Yeah, I mean, about 3 or 4 years ago, once we really knew Kettlebell Kings had, we had a brand. We were getting globally recognized. We were getting quite a bit of attention from, other companies, and just kind of in our space, we were one of the most credible companies for kettlebell. So, um, a lot of that was because we knew we had that solid. Now we need to diversify, and a lot of our revenue was generated through equipment sales. Um, at the time, and still right now, people were talking about, the trade wars with China, trade wars in general, economic bubble, whatever might happen to put a damper on our supply line for equipment sales. We needed to figure out, okay, how can we diversify and sell things that don't require that supply line? Digital products became an easy target. So kettlebell workouts, we knew people were selling kettlebell workouts, kettlebell programs. That became low hanging fruit, but we wanted to expand on that and be more than just a kettlebell. So Living Fit not only does kettlebells, but it also does battle ropes, dumbbells, nutrition, resistance bands, and it'll continue to keep expanding almost into every single fitness category. So what we're forming now is not only the workout side. So if you can think of like your Peloton like experience, it's also an educational side to it as well, that allows trainers to earn certifications and earn specialty credits towards their whatever certifying body that they're using for their personal training certification. They can get these specialty credits through this same type of app and program.
No, definitely makes sense. And so now, as you launch, the next kind of expansion, or or our business is kind of expanding on that original idea, going into the additional verticals and kind of keeping that fitness lifestyle, doing all of that. Was it the same? Was it the same experience, and it was just kind of building what you had, or was every startup different? And you had different opportunities, different difficulties, or kind of how was that? Kind of starting that over again, or building that up again for a second time in a different area.
I mean, I think everyone is going to be different. So it's definitely a huge difference between selling digital products and selling physical products.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily for us, we've only gotten more and more attention on our products. So demand for us has just increased since we've been in business. But for the digital products, it's not the same. So you have to work quite a bit harder to make those sales compared to kettlebells, which are kind of hard to find right now.
Mm.
And so I think that's probably the biggest difference in the shift of the actual product itself. For a lot of the other pieces of equipment like dumbbells, because it's the same industry, it's honestly it's easier because more people are looking for dumbbells than they are kettlebells. So I think it just varies on what product that is.
No, it definitely makes sense. So now as you expanded, you also, I think, as mentioned before, you got into a bit of CBD or hemp, and you got partnered up with George Foreman the third. Was that an extension of your business or different opportunity? How did you kind of or add that into the mix or grow that as part of the diversity?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so that's something I branched out on my own and started. I have a vision for this company, of being kind of a natural, I want to source basically the most natural plant products that I can. So whether that's supplements, salves, creams, any product that we can source from plants or from Mother Nature, is the way we want to, kind of build the company. So the community that we're trying to build there is fitness focused, but I would say it's more health and wellness focused. Um, George Foreman III actually went to Rice with me as well. We weren't, super close at Rice. I think we had a couple classes together, but after we graduated, he actually went into the fitness industry as well, and he basically founded a boxing certification and boxing gym that he was working on. I believe it was called Everybody Fights. And so he was doing that, and so there was a lot of overlap just kind of in our experience and where we were in our careers. And so we just kind of touched base, kept in loose contact. And once he found out about the Life Grows Green opportunity, we just kind of went into discussions about how both of our networks and experience could work together to really build this into something we both kind of had already kind of visualized.
No, that's cool. And it's always interesting the connections we make, whether they're close connections or not close connections, how, commonalities, whether it's going to the same school, taking a few classes together, being in similar industries, how you never know how those connections will come back around. And it sounds like it did it there as well. So now that you kind of, that kind of catches us up to a bit of where you're at today, kind of now looking at the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed? What are the opportunities to look to or to continue to explore into?
Quite a few. So, I think one of the biggest things or the biggest challenges for any company when you're trying to scale to, from a single $1 million company to multi-million or $100 million type of company is really trying to find capital and strategically make the right decisions so that you're maximizing your equity, but you're also helping the company grow as fast as you can possibly grow it. So, right now for Living Fit and Kettlebell Kings, we're doing a fundraise right now to try to raise funds to continue to build our supply lines here in America. Like I was saying, we're expanding into so many different categories. We only had kettlebells. We need the same amount of inventory for dumbbells, barbells, weight benches. You name it. Every other kind of category has to have that same amount of capital inventory. Or initial capital to build that inventory so that you're able to support a demand. So we're in fundraising mode pretty hard for that. And then the same thing for my other company. We're in fundraising as well, where we have everything established kind of online. And we're really looking to make a push nationally with kind of a sales and marketing approach with George coming on board and really going after the kind of looking at the CBD or the hemp derived product space from a recovery and wellness perspective, and really going after that niche initially and trying to take that over.
Oh, cool. No, sounds like a lot of fun opportunities, a lot of opportunities to grow and to continue to expand the business. So, with that, as we start to wrap towards the end of the podcast, I always have two questions I love to ask at the end. So we'll go ahead and jump to those now. First question is along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
The worst decision I've ever made, probably not bringing on experts early enough. I think when you're an entrepreneur in the beginning, you have to have this kind of I'm gonna do it myself attitude. I can get anything done myself. And once you really have something and you really have proven your model out, you don't necessarily know you don't know the lack of efficiency you have and how much that could affect the growth of your business. And so you may be hammering something out yourself that you should pay a professional to do because your business would grow a lot faster, and you're actually bottlenecking your growth versus helping it by doing it the mom and pop way or doing it a stubborn way. So if I could go back and learn, it would be things like at what point to transition from owning a warehouse and sending out every single package yourself and going to a fulfillment center, like different examples like that of when to make those transitions numerically and kind of from a business perspective rather than a personal or ego perspective of just trying to kind of earn your way there, so to speak.
No, I think that, there's a lot of expertise and even just, offloading things as well. Oh, too often as an entrepreneur, you think, hey, I've got to hustle or I got to do it myself because I got to make sure it's done right. Or, I don't
Yeah,
want to pay someone else to do it because we need to save every penny. And, sometimes that there's some truth to that. And you don't always have the ability to start out to pay for every expert and hire everybody you'd always want. But at the same
yeah,
point, if you don't, at some point, as you reach the ability to do that, start to offload it. To your point, I think it can hamper a business or hamper the growth a bit or keep it from growing as fast as it could because you're not bringing on those people that can help bring it to the next level. So I definitely think that's a good lesson to learn. Well, the second question I always ask is, if you're now talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
um look at it as a continuous journey. There's no start and end to it. It's something that you learn every day. You get better at it every single day. So I equate it to sports just because I played sports, and in business, athletically, you don't have to lose anything. Your mind can just get sharper and sharper and sharper. And I know now, based on my experience in having made decisions, the decisions I could have made better earlier in my career. And there's no way for me to improve on myself if I'm not a continuous learner throughout the process. So yeah, my number one advice would just be completely open to learning for the rest of your life, or as long as you want to be an entrepreneur, not getting stuck in your own brain or in your own ways.
No, and I think that is a great, I like the idea that you really, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to, maybe at some point you get old enough and you get,
Yeah,
worn out
at
enough,
some point,
but
yeah.
for a long period of time, as opposed to,
Yeah,
sports is you look at, even at the highest professional level, they only last a few years most of the time before they're
yeah,
having to step back because they're not able to maintain at the same level. Whereas the fun thing about entrepreneurship is as long as you're taking that attitude, as you mentioned, that you're continually growing, that it's not just hey, we reached this level and I'm done, but rather it's continuing to improve and to make it better and to grow and diversify. You can always have those opportunities as long as you're working. So I love that piece of
sure.
advice. Well, as we wrap up, just as a reminder to all the listeners, we do have the bonus episode or bonus question on this episode. Where we're going to talk just about a little bit about intellectual property. So if you want to hear a little bit about that top question, stay tuned for after the normal episode. But as we wrap up, otherwise, if people want to find out more about your businesses, they want to be a customer, a client, they want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out, find out more?
Several different ways. So you can find out more about me at chadprice.com. Just talks about my journey. If you want to do business, get in contact with me. That's probably the best way, chadprice.com. But then I also have the several different websites. You have kettlebellkings.com, living.fit, and lifegrowsgreen.com. So any of those companies, they're health and wellness companies, CBD related companies, generally towards anything that's trying to be productive or put growth into today's society. So
All right. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to check out any or all of the websites. Reach out to Chad if you have some need a kettlebell, you need sport gear, you want to invest, you want to find out about CBD. Lots of different things Chad has going on. Definitely worth reaching out. Well, as we wrap up, thank you again, Chad, for coming on. Stay tuned for the bonus question, but thank you for coming on. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the podcast. A couple more things as listeners. One, make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And two, leave us a review so new people can find out about the podcast as well. Last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, trademarks, or anything else with the business, just go to strategymeeting.com. So now, as we wrap up the normal part of the episode, we get it's the fun part for him, at least me, because I always get to be in a bit of the driver's seat, ask the questions, and you have to respond. Now we get to flip the tables a bit, and you get to ask me your number one question, and I get to talk a little bit about something I'm passionate about, which is intellectual property. So with that, I turn it over to you a bit. What's your number one intellectual property question?
um, do you deal with international intellectual property?
Sure. Uh-huh.
That's a simple question for me then. how do you build an international portfolio, and how do you gauge what things are worth investing in and what things are kind of just paper? I mean, I think that at the end of the day, that's the gist.
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's a hard one, and especially to start up small business, is you always have aspirations of going, going international, be worldwide and selling it. And yet the cost of doing that is substantial. I mean, if you're going to go into multiple countries, you have to file whether it's a patent or a trademark in each of the individual countries. That cost adds up, and it can be a great benefit if you have it, but it can also be a big killer if you spend all of your money there such as to detriment the company. So generally what I would advise is where you start to look is where is going to be the biggest concentration. Where's your marketplace going to be? So as an example of, hey, really 90% of where we're going to in foreseeable future, we're going to sell into is going to be in the US. And sure, there's going to be a little bit in Europe or China, but 90% of our marketplace is probably the US. I'd probably say focus your intellectual property on there because you're protecting your biggest market. And the other ones that are going to be much smaller, you simply don't go and protect, you simply go and compete without intellectual property and let that be in supplemental income. But if somebody comes along and knocks off or otherwise competes in those marketplaces, it's probably not worthwhile the investment. On the other hand, let's say you said, okay, Europe is a huge market. Everybody wants, I'll use the example kettlebells. 55% of our market there, 35% in the US, and 20% in Canada. I don't think I have my math added up. I think I had over 100%. But then I would start to say, okay, then we probably want to protect in those few countries. Probably makes sense because those are big enough markets. We are going to sell into enough that we're going to want to actually file in protection. So when you get into international, it's one where you can spend a lot of money and not get a good return. Or if you're careful and you look and say, now it's as much as making a business case, because typically you ask an intellectual property attorney, and if they give you a legal advice, says, yeah, we can file in all these countries. Here is the cost it's going to be. You should file in every one because you never know where it's going to be. But I'd really take a step back and say there's a much more of a business case that you should be looking at. Where's our market? Where do we see us growing into? Where do we want to protect our competitive advantage? And that's where you invest in. And then you just simply say, if we can't afford it to go everywhere, we're going to protect our biggest markets. And then we'll just simply, other opportunities where we could have filed into, we'll just compete without intellectual property. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I think it just the way my mind works is I'm always trying to make that into a number. And when you're thinking about what's worth protecting, right? Like, so what size, or what volume of whether that's revenue, profit, however you want to cut that, how do you equate that to a number? So if you have a company that's doing $1 million in a country, is that worth it? Is it $100,000 worth it? When you're talking about protecting your IP, how do you really justify at what threshold you make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit of a business. I mean, because if you say $100,000 in revenue versus profit, hey, if you're only making $5,000 of profit for revenue, then it probably doesn't make sense. But I would put it as, give you an example, most countries, and there's exceptions high or low, but on average, to go and get a patent internationally, you're probably looking on the low side $10,000, on the high side up to $20,000. That's a pretty big range. I would usually say $50 or $12,000 if I say country by country to get through all of the bases. So if now you're saying, okay, we're doing $100,000 net profit, or we're doing seven figures, $1 million in that country, then it probably makes sense because you're going to have, okay, for that smaller investment, $12,000, we can protect what we're doing proprietary, keep us and it could be a trademark as well. If we have a really great brand and we want to protect it, then you're saying, trademarks are even more so because, to get the trademark in a given country, you're probably anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 as an average. And so you're saying, okay, I would look at it as if you're getting to where that is, if you were saying 10% of the, and this is a hard question, but 10% of the net profits is going to be in that country, or we see the next 2 or 3 years, that's where the trajectory is headed. I'd probably say you're getting into that range of 10 to 15% of net profits. If you were to reinvest in that, would probably give you a pretty good range.
Got it. Sounds good.
All right. Well, with that, it was certainly a fun question to talk a little about intellectual property and certainly the international and the foreign scene as well. Appreciate you coming on the podcast again, Chad. Now, if anybody else out there have any other questions, or if you, Chad, even have any other questions later down the road, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab a bit more time with us to chat. Always happy to answer those questions. Now, as we wrap up, thank you again, Chad, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today.